Hello demigods, monsters, and gods alike. This is the Olympus Report. Have you ever wanted to jump into a book or movie and just give a character a hug? Well, that's how I feel about Nico Di Angelo. Here's a character breakdown of everyone's favorite son of Hades. Nico Di Angelo was born around 1932 on January 28th to Maria Di Angelo and the god of the underworld, Hades. Nico was the pair's second child, their first being Nico's sister, Bianca. Zeus feared the children and their power, because, Zeus. So Hades moved the family from Italy to Washington, D.C. in hopes of protecting them. But unfortunately, Zeus struck and blew up the hotel that they were staying in. Hades was able to protect the two children, Nico and Bianca, but unfortunately Maria Di Angelo lost her life. Hades then put the children in the Lotus Hotel and Casino, where they were suspended in time for decades until they were removed in the events of the novel The Titan's Curse. That's where we first meet Nico. He and his sister were attending a boarding school called Westover Hall. Percy, Thalia, and Annabeth went there after receiving a tip from Grover that there might be two demigods attending the school. And after some mishaps, they were brought to Camp Half-Blood. In the beginning, Nico was just a happy-go-lucky kid who loved the card game Mytho-Magic, but unfortunately, things took a downward spiral from there. Bianca joined the Hunters, and unfortunately, Nico felt left behind, and if that wasn't bad enough, on Bianca's first quest as a hunter, she unfortunately lost her life, sacrificing herself so the others could continue. Nico lost the one person who truly understood him and the last remaining member of his family. After this, Nico became lost and resentful, a trait unfortunately most kids of Hades suffer from. Because of this, Nico was easily manipulated by the Ghost King Minos. But after talking to the ghost of his sister Bianca, he turned his act around and helped Percy and the entirety of Camp Half-Blood in the Battle of the Labyrinth and the Battle of Manhattan. But even though Nico was a hero, he still felt lost and alone and unwelcomed at camp. Nico would be the first to discover Camp Jupiter and the Roman demigods, and during his time there, he was able to resurrect his half-sister, Hazel Levesque, from the dead. During that whole Doors of Death fiasco. Nico was then captured by Gia's giants and was eventually rescued by the 7 demigods. But it wasn't until the novel The House of Hades that Nico started to accept himself for who he is. During a battle with Cupid, Nico is pushed into admitting what he's been denying for a long time, that he's had a crush on Percy and is gay. This was especially hard for Nico. In this quote from the Trials of Apollo, Apollo says,
"But Will was right about how much Nico had been through. He had been born in Mussolini, Italy. He had survived decades in the time warp reality of the Lotus Casino. He'd emerged in modern times disoriented and culture shocked, arrived at Camp Half-Blood, and promptly lost his sister Bianca to a dangerous quest. He had wandered the labyrinth in self-imposed exile, being tortured and brainwashed by a malevolent ghost. He'd overcome everyone's distrust and emerged from the Battle of Manhattan a hero. He'd been captured by giants during the rise of Gia. He wandered Tartarus alone and somehow managed to come out alive. And through it all, he'd struggle with his upbringing as a conservative Catholic Italian male from the 1930s, and finally learned to accept himself as a young gay man."
But this was only the first step for Nico in accepting who he is. With the help of his new friend Jason, Raina, and eventually his boyfriend Will, Nico is able to learn to love himself and realize that others care for him too, finally finding a home at Camp Half-Blood. Nico once again pops up in the Trials of Apollo and is a key player in helping the god Apollo defeat the Emperor Nero. That's all we have on Nico so far, but don't worry, we're going to be getting a lot more Nico content in the new book coming out all about him and Will.
Titled The Sun and the Star, a Nico Di Angelo adventure.
Nico's main weapon is his 3-foot-long black Stygian iron sword that has the power to suck away its enemy's essence. For a short time, he also used Diocletian's scepter to call upon the dead to a greater degree. As being a son of the underworld, he already has the power of necromancy. This includes power over ghosts, summoning deceased souls, releasing souls, turning the living into ghosts, and sensing when one is dead. As well, Nico has geokinesis. Nico can control the earth, blackening it and controlling the black rock of the underworld. Nico can open fissures in the earth that can swallow up creatures, rise flames, and trap them in the underworld. And if that wasn't enough, Nico can also sense and summon the bones under the earth and has complete control over shadows. This includes shadow travel. And he can also drop temperatures to dangerous degrees. Well, I guess he is one of the big three. As mentioned before, Nico's fatal flaw is holding grudges, which all kids of Hades struggle with. For me, Nico's hero moment could be a lot of different options. Overcoming his grudge against Percy was definitely up there. Saving Reyna and Coach Hedge was definitely a big one. But I think his biggest moment is his confrontation against Cupid. As stated before, admitting who he was just super difficult for Nico, simply because of his upbringing and all of his experiences. In this moment, Nico let go of all that sadness he had inside of him by finally admitting what he had been hiding for so long. And in doing so, he not only realized that others might accept him, but maybe he could accept others as well. And he made his first real friend, Jason. And let's not forget, without Nico, they never would have gotten Diocletian's scepter, which saved them in the end. In this moment, for the first time, Nico had to step up for others in exchange for something that was truly devastating to himself. But as always, he was selfless and saved countless lives. Well, that's all I have for you this week on Nico Di Angelo. Let me know what your favorite Nico quote is down in the comments below. And as always, demigods, until next time, stay safe.